Good morning, everybody. It's Thursday. I think it's the 17th of November 2025, 6:30 in the morning, and I'm off on my run. And I'm going to talk today about successful running. I talked about this a few times before, had a few different thoughts about it. Mostly I've said things like, well, first of all, you need to define what success is. Success for some people is setting the PB, or PR, I think the Americans call it, personal record. Success for some people is just completing whatever they've set out to do, whether it's 5k, a legal park run, or run like today that I'm doing, or whatever it is. That's how success means different things to different people. And it might even mean different things to the same person on different days. So for example, today might be success is doing the course that I've got in my head that I set out for myself. Whereas on Saturday, when I'm doing the park run morning, success means different things. It means coming in under 30 minutes, finishing in the top half of the field, and trying to get to the 2k marker before the first runners on their way back. If I don't achieve all of those things, or even any of them, it doesn't constitute failure. But I still did the park run, still got to the finish, so on. It just means on that day I didn't meet my goals. And so success means different things to different people. But I've normally said there are two factors that determine if you have success at a particular event that you might be doing, like today's event, or the park run, or the 10k race you've signed up for, whatever it is, or whether you'll be successful overall as a runner, and you'll stick at it because you're achieving some of the things you all want to achieve, and so on. And I've come to the conclusion that there are not two factors but three, and I'll come to the third one eventually. Let me just talk about the other two first of all. First factor is undoubtedly the physical one. Are you in good physical shape and health? Or can you get yourself into good physical shape and health? Now, that's, again, different for different people, and will depend on the event that you're doing or what you're running. Obviously, you're going to need a different level of physical fitness to be able to run 5k than you are to be able to run a marathon. Let's assume for a moment you have underlying health conditions, joint problems, muscle problems, heart or lung problems, and potentially you can get yourself into the sort of physical shape that you need to be in to be able to run and run consistently and run well. Now the physical side then is doing the training that you have to do for whatever event it is that you are training for. Now, I've said it a good few times, but worth repeating. I've never run the marathon. I've run a half marathon distance a good few times, but I've never run the marathon. But I know that I couldn't just wake up one morning and say, I think I'll run a marathon today, or a marathon distance. I know there is a block of training I would have to do. And there are all sorts of running coaches who will write training blocks programs for you. I've never tried any of them, so I can't tell you if they're any good or not. But if you don't put in the work and do the volume of kilometres that you're going to need to do over a long period of time, that is, I think people say, even if you're already a runner, that you need somewhere around 12 to 16 weeks to prepare for a marathon and to do the work that you're going to need to do to be able to do that event. And that's going to involve running 3 or 4 times a week, and it's going to involve gym sessions for strength and conditioning, and maybe even some time on the treadmill or the bike as well, or a bike, either stationary or actually out on the road. Like I said, I've never done that event, and I don't have a training program. I just go out and run wherever I want to run, like I am today. But there is no substitute for training. There are no shortcuts. You can't leave anything out. And whilst you may not have to run the actual marathon distance in your training, you have to run pretty close to it to know that you can do it. So there's the physical side, and the physical side includes all that I've just said, but also you've got to factor in things like nutrition, or fueling as they say. Now, I'm not a nutritionist or dietitian or anything like that, and I'm not giving you nutritional advice, but you've got to make sure that you have sufficient energy stored in your cells and stored in your body for you to be able to run the marathon distance. And people will give you, again, plans, nutritional plans, fueling plans, whatever you want to call them, that will make sure that you've eaten properly in the couple of days coming up to the event that you're running in, so that you will have sufficient fuel. And there'll be people who will plans will probably give you advice about gels that you carry and use during the race, when to use them, which ones to use at which point, and so on. I want to make it clear again, I don't have any experience of these things, but I've watched enough videos on YouTube of people who do to know that those things are all part of what leads to success in running and successfully completing the marathon. So there's the physical side of what you've got to do. Now then there's, and you can train and prepare for that with the plans I just talked about. Then there is the psychological side, which is the mental side of it. You have the mental toughness, the resilience, whatever the words are, to get you through the distance that you're hoping to run. Now, I don't know how you prepare your mind for that, other than, again, going out, doing the physical training, and your body's feeling like it can, and telling you it can still keep going, that your mind is sending you signals that it's time to stop, or it's too hard, or whatever, is when you start telling yourself to keep going and push on and push through and so on. Even on Saturday at a park run, a course that I go to here all the time in Goulburn, I have little things that I say to myself at points. I don't usually have any problem on the way out, although sometimes until I'm probably warmed up, which is about the first kilometre, I just have to tell myself to keep going. The muscles will soon be warm and that little twinge that doesn't feel right will have gone and you'll be okay. On the way back, I'm telling myself things like, well, you've reached the halfway point now, you've got to go back anyway, so just keep running. I pass something like the 3 kilometre mark and I say to myself, well, you've gone further than you've got to go, so keep going. Get to the 4 kilometre mark, I tell myself we've only got one to go now. A little bit of a rise there and then you're on the flat bit and so on. When you're out on a run like this, you look ahead and see the intersection just down the end of this road here, for example, and you say, well, you just get to that intersection and then make your turn you've got to make and so on. But there are little tricks that you have, little things that you tell yourself to just keep you going. Tell your legs not to fail you now. Good, strong, sturdy legs and they can do this and all that. So there's a psychological side to running and to running successfully, whether it's just running every Saturday at the park run or it's 3 or 4 times a week like this, or it's the marathon that you've prepared for or whatever it is. Obviously it's a bit more complicated if you're running a marathon. It's a longer distance. Fatigue is going to be a much more of an issue than it is if you're running a 5k or something. But this is where and then there's the third factor, and there are a few things that have come to me lately, or that I've become aware of lately, that made me think about this third factor. And so I'm going to talk about the third factor and some people that have experienced the third factor, not to have a dig at them or have a go at them, but just to say what this third factor is. So you're probably thinking, get to the point, what is the third factor? We need to know what the third factor is. Well, the third factor is on the day. What happens on the day? And there are parts of that you can control, and that's to do with your own performance. And there are parts of that you cannot control. So I told you in a video not so long ago about Ben and Mary Bridges. They're only a couple originally from England that live in Thailand. They do a lot of running, and they have a channel called This Messy Happy. And if you recall that earlier video of mine, they went to Berlin to run the Berlin Marathon. They're both accredited running coaches, and they coach other people and devise training programs for them, so forth. So they know what this is all about, and they know there are no shortcuts, and they did all the physical preparation that they needed to do to run the Berlin Marathon. I got to Berlin a day or two before, time to acclimatise, beat the jet lag and everything. Went out on the day having a race pace in mind and a finishing time they wanted to achieve. In his case it was 2 hours 30 something, I think. In her case 3 hours and a bit. Now, in his case, something didn't feel right almost from the beginning, and he described it as saying my legs just didn't arrive. His head was ready for the run, but his legs weren't ready to cooperate that day. Now, he finished the event, and he finished it in a respectable time, but not the time that he was hoping for. And that was because on the day, all the things that he had hoped would happen just didn't fall into place that day. Nobody's fault, no conspiracies, nobody setting out to nobble him. It's just what happens on the day. Now in her case, something similar. She said she didn't feel right after about 5Ks, and she tried to push through, and she again finished the race and recorded a respectable time, but not the time she wanted. Now, a more extreme example of what happens on the day was not long after that. They went to Cape Town in South Africa to run the marathon, and had done all the work again. Not missed sessions or scrimped on any of the physical work or anything like that. Eaten properly, drunk enough water, taken their electrolytes, all that sort of stuff. 90 minutes before the event, it was cancelled because of high winds, and so no marathon for them that day. Now they went back to Thailand, they went back to the drawing board, and they're preparing for Shanghai. They've both been accepted to run in Tokyo in 2026, and they're doing all the preparation and work that they know they need to do in order for them to be able to compete successfully in that event. And I hope that everything goes well for them. Now, there's another runner who seems to post a lot. It comes on my social media feed, so whilst I don't follow her, I've been getting a lot of her posts, and I take a bit of an interest in what she has to say. Her name is Elizabeth Clore, spelled C-L-O-R, so I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. She lives in Washington, DC, and she describes herself, among other things, as a distance racer, and she is also an accredited running coach. She was recently preparing for a marathon event, I think in Indianapolis. I don't know where that is in relation to Washington, but I think not close by. In any case, she was preparing for this marathon. She ran the Boston Marathon 6 times and run a few other marathons, so she knows what she needs to do to be able to complete a marathon. She had a training program. She followed it religiously, didn't take any shortcuts, didn't miss any sessions except where she was forced to by other circumstances, which in her case she had a problem with her leg where she had some sort of infection and was told to rest for a few days, and she went to Paris on business and was able to run in Paris but not necessarily run the program that she'd set out for herself. Again, she had a plan for the run, and she had a pace in mind that she knew she needed to run in order to record the time that she wanted to record. And she set off with this Indianapolis Marathon thing with all of that in mind. And then things on the day happened. She got some soreness and stiffness in her calves, and she tried to run that out. Sort of successfully, in that she was able to continue to run, finish the course and finish the event. But again, she wasn't able to record the time that she wanted. And she ought not to look at that as a failure, and I'm sure she doesn't, but just look at it as well, I didn't achieve what I set out to do this event. Now, a third circumstance that I've come across involves 2 people called the Brooms. That's their surname, so they're called 2 running brooms. A man and his wife. Again, they're both running coaches in the UK. Morning. She was running a marathon in Wales as part of a team representing Wales, and he was doing the local park run the day before, wanting to run under 20 minutes. Now in her case, as I said, as a running coach, she knows what she needs to do to be able to run a marathon. She had some ongoing back pain, sciatic pain, I think she described it as, and she works full time, so she was finding it difficult to fit in all the things that she needed to do in order to be fully prepared to run this marathon. I think that sessions that she missed were to do with strength and conditioning, but she had put in the volume of kilometres that she needed to do in order to be able to run the distance. So she sets out on the run with all the plans to run the pace that she needed to run, clocking herself every mile as they do in the UK, seeing that she was either on track or at least going according to what she had planned for herself. And then at some point the back pain kicked in. And at first she thought she could just run it out, and then it got worse, and ultimately she had to step off the course, and she just didn't finish the course, and she was naturally disappointed for herself, disappointed that she let down the team that she was representing, and so it was an example of things that can happen on the day that you can't control, that are going to affect your performance. And in his case, as I said, he was going to do the local park run the day before and try to run it in under 20 minutes. He actually ran it in 20.04, so 4 seconds outside what he had planned for himself. I think in part he took a wrong turn somewhere, but again, things just didn't work out for him on the day. And I know in my teaching days, when we were rehearsing for school performances of some sort, end of year concerts, that sort of stuff, we'd always tell ourselves, as I'm sure every other school teacher did, and lots of other people who are performers tell themselves, it'll be right on the night, and mostly it is. But sometimes they're just things that you just can't control. As I said, you can't control the weather. You can't have any influence on the course. You've no doubt studied the course, looked at all the charts that show the elevation and where all the turns are and all that sort of stuff. You know where the aid stations and so on are. But as I think Eliud Kipchoge was quoted as saying once recently, when he was asked about the course or whatever the event was he was running, he said the course is the course, and that's what it is. You can't do anything about that. You can't do anything about what other people might do on the course. You know, there's a certain etiquette that we're all supposed to observe, and if it's possible, you're supposed to self-seed. So even if you're at the park run and you know you're a 30-minute finisher, you're not supposed to be right at the start line, because that's when things are mental, everything's congested, everyone's wanting to get away, and you're going to be in the way of the faster runners. But we can't control that. So what's the takeaway here, I guess, is the question you're asking yourself. Well, it is whatever event you're doing, even if it's just running like this a few times a week, do the physical work. In this case, the physical work is just running every couple of days or whatever it is that you run. If you're preparing for a race of some sort, whether it's the park run or the local 10k or the half marathon or whatever it is necessary, get yourself a training program, get someone to run with you so that it makes you accountable, and you're more likely to do things rather than say, I don't feel like I want to do this today, because you don't want to let the other person down. And so do the work, take notice of the recommendations, if there are any, regarding nutrition and hydration. Build your mental strength and resilience by whatever tips you need, whatever tricks you need to tell yourself to say, just keep going a bit further, not far now, almost to the intersection, almost to the white post there. That pole at the top there is the top of the hill, and then you're going to be running downhill. Whatever it is that you have to say, do those things. So you feel as if you've done everything you can to prepare for the day, and then on the day, again, control the things you can control, be in charge of the things that you can manage, and let other things take care of themselves. And at the end of the day, at the end of the event, tell yourself confidently that whatever it is you did that day, whatever time it was just one event, and it doesn't define you in any way. It's not the, whilst you might be only as good as your last event, next event you might find you run a better time or a better pace or whatever. Don't beat up on yourself too much about it. If you're one of those people that studies the data and pore over it all and learn from it, and then go out and do your next event whether it's the next day's training or it's the next event you've entered. Go out and do it and have confidence that you can do it and that you will do the event and get a result that you'll be happy with. Well, those are my thoughts on that subject. If you have an opinion or a comment, leave it in the appropriate spot. When I become aware of it, I'll respond. Enjoy whatever running you're doing today, tomorrow, next week, whenever that is. And I'll catch you when I'm making the next running video, whenever that'll be. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.